Hey, I'm Sith King.
And I'm Sonic Sons.
We're the Rambling Reviewers.
And today we're looking at Steven Universe, all of it. Because we just finished Steven Universe Future, the epilogue series.
Mm-hmm. So, what can you say?
It was a beautiful show.
I thought it was good.
And I guess I liked it better than you in the end. That's alright.
Yeah, I don't know. Steven Universe, I think, has always had a bit of a disconnect between the message they wish to tell and what's actually on screen in some cases.
I mean, yeah, we've talked about before about some of the ways the show went wrong, some of the flaws it had. It's always had a tension between the towny stuff and the action stuff. We'll win the fight and then go out for pizzas, as the expanded opening theme song says. You just have to take that as the premise, right? In addition to all these magical powers that defy the laws of physics, there's also a world in which the gems logically should be treated as some sort of celebrity superhero types. Okay, and instead of just like people walking around. And this kid involved in all this epic space Nazi battles is also just a kid who's going to get fry bits and a pizza and stuff. Which, by the way,
that's not quite what I mean, but let's...
Well, that's the first and most obvious tension, I think.
Yeah, that I didn't mind as much, because... Well, quite frankly, I've seen lots of shows where they have that sort of divide between, okay, I want to be a normal kid, and then at the same time, I'm also a superhero.
Yeah.
So that part wasn't as big of a bother to me. I mean, I wasn't fond of the Townie episodes.
I think the Townie episodes were important to the show, but I can understand why other people are like, can you just give me more space Nazis? Because that's exciting, and I get it. I also saw that they're trying to tell the story of this kid's path of growing up. And he has to have a lot of those, like, regular kid things. And he collects action figures and, random little pursuits and hobbies. And watches Lonely Blade on TV and things that you logically couldn't do too much if you were legitimately worried about the end of the Earth.
Yeah, and, okay, those are all valid points. My problem with Steven Universe is that they tend to have the emotional stuff take precedence over what should logically happen. Like... Not even just that. Okay, there's that disconnect, like what you said, but okay. Let's go through Steven Universe Future, and I'll try to point out a few of the moments that I noticed.
Okay, so
it started with the Steven Universe the movie, which, it's Steven Universe movie was fine. We reviewed that already. Go watch it. Steven Universe Future started off with the episode Little Homeschool, which is about Steven and the Gems have opened up a little homeschool, a place where Gems can learn to integrate. Jasper basically being a dick and being, no, I don't want to integrate and stuff. And that was fine. It showed... Honestly, that's the sort of thing that I expected from an epilogue series. Showing the aftermath of the events. And Jasper is deliberately not integrating into Earth culture.
Which fits with Jasper.
Then there's Guidance, which really... Guidance starts the real theme of the season, which...
It touched on it a little in the first one. When he had his first bits of pink all of a sudden in the first episode, I think.
No. The pink is just the window dressing. When the real theme of the thing is, you need to learn how to find yourself and invent yourself. And the first episode wasn't really as much about that. I mean...
more like setting the stage for the rest of the thing.
Right. But honestly, I think that it was my favorite episode of...
The first one or Guidance?
The first one, not Guidance. Anyways, Guidance starts to develop that Steven is not necessarily where he needs to be in his life. Specifically, he tries to help Amethyst out with a program that she created to get Gems to do... new jobs that aren't related to their old homeworld jobs. The problem is that all the jobs they got, that Amethyst assigned them, actually had to do with their old homeworld jobs.
So Steven says, hey, let's be more creative about it, and 2 out of 3 times that fails, but one time he has a point, so it's like...
Exactly one time.
Yeah.
Larimar proved herself to be a freaking psychopath there. I like to hear their screams. Later it was emphasized, of joy. Screams of joy. But seriously, no one says it like that unless they actually like to hear you scream.
I'm gonna point it up to cultural mistranslation.
Yeah,
Gems and
given
people.
the old gem culture, I'm gonna say that was
Yeah.
Yeah, but it starts off. The theme of this season is that Steven is not where he needs to be, and that people grow up and move on, and Steven needs to do the same. Let's see. Episode 3 is another one that I like because it touches on stuff that we've seen before. It shows the aftermath of something that was a hanging plot thread in the original series. And, that's good for an epilogue series. It's Rosebuds, where all the rose quartzes who look like Steven's mom have been unleashed in the zoo. Except the Zoomans, for some reason, are running the zoo now, and it's traveling the galaxy because people who are essentially like sheep and have been given an FTL drive capable starship are exactly the ones. Wait, no part of this makes any goddamn sense.
What else do you expect them to do?
I don't know, continue their lives in the zoo while the other gems run the ship?
I'm pretty sure if they did that, we would be complaining about bad, broken morals there. Like, I thought it was all about freedom, and here these people are still in a zoo.
Okay, then stick them on Earth or something. Don't put primitives who don't know what the spear is in charge of something with a faster-than-light drive.
Yeah. Maybe it's got some safety features.
Yeah, but Rosebuds delved into, how Steven is dealing with his feelings for his mom, and which was a big part of the previous series.
Which, by the way, we got to mention this at some point. We spent 6 whole seasons wondering, so why exactly did Rose Quartz decide to have a kid in such manner as essentially caused her death? And it turns out they never did have an answer for that.
Yeah, that was annoying.
I remember I just leafed through the few pages of the Steven Universe, behind the scenes book, and in the initial pitch it said something about how the other 3 gems, 3 main gems, were confused at why Rose chose this path. So I was like, oh, so there's a secret. Well, the secret is the writers themselves don't really know what the answer is. My headcanon is she somehow been hit with a gem weapon of some kind, and she was essentially terminal anyway. And she was going to lose her physical form permanently and become an inert rock, and so this was her only option to sort of continue onward. It's totally headcanon, there's no hints of that in the show, but it's the only thing that would make sense.
I kind of got the feeling that she was running away again.
Yeah, that's a really dark version of running away.
Oh, I'm sorry, but Rose Quartz was terminally ill. That's so much better.
That is way better than suicide. God damn.
Okay. Next up is Volleyball, which is another episode that continues on with the streak of, okay, we're exploring what used to happen. Specifically, old Pink Pearl, who used to belong to Pink Diamond, but then became White Diamond's avatar throughout the majority of the final arc of the original Steven Universe. Well, she's come to Earth to try to get her crack fixed, and we learn some lore about where pearls come from, about how they're outfitted, and how they're treated in Homeworld. It's really interesting stuff.
We also learn how she got the crack in her face.
Yeah, apparently, the writers just really hate having Rose Quartz having any positive attributes.
Rose is this actually kind of falls on our previous point. They hadn't really thought out that one part of Rose. I think there's a lot of other parts that weren't fully thought out. And also I think the fandom has a weird way of focusing on certain things and not other things. Because on the one hand, she's a savior who totally went against the evil space Nazis to save the freaking world, and that's wonderful. And then for some reason, she for no reason keeps lying a secret, from Pearl of all people. Keeps bismuth a secret from all of them. She had thousands of years to be like, hey, by the way, I've got bismuth stored in a pocket dimension. Maybe we should talk about it.
Yeah, she left
Spinel
behind.
Asteroid place, whatever that was.
She abused Volleyball until her eye was destroyed.
Right, and it feels less we're seeing an interesting, nuanced character from many angles, and more you have 2 separate ideas here that keep clashing.
Yeah, I mean, I will grant you, there are very rarely, if ever, any idealized human beings that had no flaws. Mr. Rogers is one of them, mind you. But you have the Rose Quartz who led the rebellion to save everyone, who then apparently did nothing for thousands of years, not even turning off all of this technology that was super dangerous to the world.
I mean, maybe
she
they
loved.
were doing those missions, but wow, after 5,000 years, you think they would have finished it by now?
Yeah, I mean,
It's a little vague.
It's not exactly like they had to search for it. Rose owned the moon base. She could just look up where all of the different sites were, and probably just warp there with Pearl overnight and go off, 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 off.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's not like she had she didn't have the force necessary to stop the corrupted gems there. She's a diamond.
Yeah, she's quite powerful.
So the problem that I think we have is that up until a certain point, Rose was kind of a jerk, and then she tried to immediately flip herself over to good and presented herself as good to everyone. And then question mark, Steven is born. And everyone loves
several
Rose Quartz.
question marks in there. And
I have heard the theory that we're just hearing about Rose Quartz's story in reverse. Like, when we first hear about her, that was after the period of time where she truly devoted her life to making sure that everyone was happy and stuff.
Yes, after she did a heel face turn, yeah.
Yeah. But then you look into some of her, and that as time goes on, we find out more and more of her past, going further and further back. And so this new volleyball thing is something that we've just found out about. It's the most furthest back in her past when she was at her worst.
Yeah. But then we're left with odd questions of, like, why did you keep lying a secret? Like, that's not even a good or evil question. That's just like a random, that had to be secret so it could be a cool surprise for Steven to find. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like, it's off theme.
Even if we're told that she loved humanity and the Earth so much that she started the rebellion over it, and that's great, except that none of the gems really know anything about the humans that Rose is super passionate about. We don't really... I mean, heck, when we first meet the crystal gems chronologically, from the humanities perspective... Well, okay, not really. When Greg first meets the crystal gems, he has to drive through a chain link fence to get to the crystal gems, and it doesn't look like it has a door or anything. So
I forgot about the fence.
So, Rose even laughs at the concept of Greg understanding her. Why don't you treat me like a person?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember exactly what they said, though.
I get what they're going for. Rose was their leader, but at the same time, she's a heavily flawed individual.
Again, I keep coming back to more of some flaws in the writing versus necessarily flaws in the character, which again, the character is made of the writing. But it's less of like, clearly she's, deserves less respect than we've given her, and more like, no, clearly it's just vague. Clearly it's vague, is what I'm saying, and in not in quite the right way. Now, there's a lot of great episodes of Steven wrestling with how he feels about his mom, and that's interesting, and it could have built up to more of a clear picture by the end. Even just those little bits of, like, when Rose is deciding to fake her own death, because we see that in the flashback thing through Pearl's mind, she's really flippant about it. She's like, "Oh yeah, blue and yellow just like won't bother. It's fine." And like, am I supposed to believe you were dumb enough to think they would let a rebellion happen and they would allow one of the diamonds to be murdered and they wouldn't be upset about it? Like,
yeah, okay, even if you... Okay, let's assume that that's what she thought about her family towards herself. Like, realistically, if you murdered, like, a member of the English royal family, they would descend upon you like a ton of bricks. And not even just because it's the royal family, though admittedly, it is. It's because you just killed, like, an important cultural
landmark,
social symbol for England. They're gonna retaliate.
Right, and then, as we've talked about earlier in our we think it's maybe the end of Steven Universe review, because it was unclear how much more Steven Universe there was going to be. But when we got towards the end there, before the movie came out, we were talking about, okay, so right at the end they're talking about the diamonds as an abusive family system, with the white diamond essentially as like the abusive mom or something, which is a fine idea, but then build that in previously. Build that in when Pink is gonna fake her own death, be it like a very much serious moment. Yeah, I don't want to be a diamond anymore. I don't want anyone to know I was a diamond. I want to disassociate from that family because they're horrible. They've been horrible, not just to the universe, but to me personally. Right? And she didn't have that attitude. It was more like a game. And it's like, well, that doesn't fit with the new backstory that you get kind of retrofitted in towards the end. It's not enough to turn me away from the series entirely. There's still a lot to love there. But, we're reviewers, and we're going to grapple with these things that didn't add up as much. And especially in this thing that's all about emotional maturity and the details of people's feelings and relationships. Those are the flaws that stick out to me most.
Yeah. So anyway, that's Volleyball.
Yep.
Next is Bluebird, which is another problem for me. Okay, Bluebird in and of itself is a fine episode. It doesn't really drive this. Okay, you know what's wrong with Bluebird?
Right.
It's basically filler. There's nothing really that gets introduced.
It was mostly like, for those of you who really want to know what Eyeball and Aquamarine are up to, here's both of them in the same episode.
Yeah, all one of you who were wondering what these super minor characters who showed up like 3 times maybe total across the whole of Steven.
I'm sure some people are curious. It's fine.
But here's the other problem with it. The Bluebird is the fusion between Aquamarine and Eyeball. Which, okay, fine, whatever, and it's done to show that relationships that are based solely on hatred for someone else is unhealthy, because that's apparently a message we need to pass around.
Just in case you need to know it, kids.
Yeah. At the beginning of every episode, there's this scene where it shows all the threats that they're going to face this season, and it shows this gallery of shadowed figures menacing over everything.
Over the camera, yeah.
Well, the problem is that picture, for the most part, is kind of a lie. Oh, all of these threats appear.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just that they don't matter a lot. It's not like there's this grand alliance of evil that's...
No, but I'm actually proud of them for being willing to do an epilogue season. Right? Because normally, once the greatest threat is done, we have maybe 10 minutes and then the credits roll. And it's like, you know what? We're going to do a whole freaking season about... And now, no, seriously, there aren't any major threats aside from Steven's own PTSD, which we'll get to in a moment.
Okay, they show White Diamond, looking like she's infected and glowing red. That wasn't even a threat. That was just White Diamond suffering at the hands of Steven, as we'll get to.
Right.
Why is she even on the list of villains for this season?
They didn't say villains. This is just spooky music and pictures. And the idea is spooky stuff is still happening. The future's not completely bright. And it was spooky, that scene.
Okay, yeah, that's true. But when they had a similar scene in the original expanded theme song, they had Jasper, Peridot, Yellow Diamond, and Lapis, looking over the cast, and Yellow Diamond slowly turning her head in an extremely ominous... Look, I'm not saying... You have an excellent point. The future isn't necessarily all bright and sunshine and rainbows. But at the same time, though, you have this random collection of one-episode threats versus one of the military rulers of an interstellar empire is finally starting to take notice of your dumbasses and is getting ready to kick your ass.
Yeah.
It just lacks some of the same emotional weight, is what I'm saying about that particular thing. But, yeah.
Speaking of which, the very easy conversion of those space Nazis into good people is still odd and happened very fast. But okay, we'll take it. Yeah. For the premise of Steven Universe Future, they're all good guys now and they've completely repented. Wow, that was really quick change, you guys, even for the standards of the show.
Yeah. Anyway, next up is a very special episode, which is...
It's actually called a very special episode, in case you're
wondering.
Weird.
It's just weird. It's so freaking weird. It's essentially Steven running back and forth between 2 different places and fusing with Pearl and Garnet, back to back to back to back, in order to lead a group of students in knowing how to be safe and taking care of Onion. And then it turns out the whole thing was a PSA about learning how to manage your time by Sunstone.
What they're really trying to get at is Steven's theme of being too self-sacrificing. He just can't give
Is
himself...
that why that episode... No, I didn't get that until just now.
Well, I didn't fully get it, honestly, either at the beginning. Like, I followed the arc of everything well enough, and I saw the finale, actually, before you saw it just now. And then I read an interview with Rebecca Sugar, who was talking about how Steven has a problem being too self-sacrificing, and he's, like, essentially too much of a hero, in a way. Like, he allows himself to get hurt because he puts everyone else's needs first. And having read that and then rewatched some of this, was like, oh, right, that is a thing. And I wasn't primed to notice it as much the first time because you think of that as the hero thing. That's what heroes do. They put other people first. And then he takes it too far that his emotional issues get out of hand and he has all this PTSD stuff that nearly ends in catastrophe. So it added up. What do you know?
Okay. And that's about where the half-season mark is. The reason why I say that is because from here on out, it becomes less of a epilogue show to Steven Universe and more of a Steven's kind of got some emotional problems series.
Which itself is the epilogue, but yes.
Yeah, but it shifts over from we're dealing with the leftover plot points from the first series and into we're doing our own thing with Steven's emotions as the primary focus versus the...
Yeah, as it becomes more severe, it takes up more of our attention.
Yeah, then there's Snow Day, which... Yeah, there's a snow day at Little Homeworld, which I'm not 100% sure how that works, given that you have gems who literally control fire with their minds.
I'm going to assume they adopted that particular human custom, because they felt like it.
Yep.
But yeah, we get to see, a sense of wanting the old Steven back, and why can't things be playful again, and Steven himself needing to recognize that he is still Steven Universe at age 16. It's okay to play tag with your family, I like that.
Yeah, well, the gems also need to realize that Steven's growing up and changing.
Yeah, they had that side of it too.
With a little bit of a nod to the audience saying, dude, he's growing up, he's going to change.
Yeah.
Get over it. No. Let's see. Why So Blue? I liked this one, actually. Didn't have much to do with the Steven breakdown arc.
Not
but
much, no.
Basically, they go to... Steven and Lapis go to a strange alien planet where two other Lapis Lazulis are... terraforming the world to be useful.
In gem terms, yeah.
Yeah. And they go... I like how the planet is inhabited solely by, like, cute, adorable little creatures that look like the pre-evolved versions of Bulbasaur. I guarantee you, if it was on that jungle moon, Steven wouldn't have cared, because, like, it would have been, we need to protect the organic life of... And then the giant bird thing swoops down and starts trying to eat them. Kill the planet! Kill the planet!
Yeah.
And sometimes it does deliver an important emotional message where it goes, okay, sometimes what you consider good and what other people consider good, they're different. And sometimes you're not going to be able to get through to people. Which is a lesson that I really think Steven Universe needed to have back in the first series, too.
Especially because we did such an absurdly good job getting through to white, yellow, and blue.
Yeah.
So some people are holdouts. Jasper's a holdout. Eyeballs a holdout, and so is these people.
So Steven's like, okay, well, you can do something that makes you happy. Terraforming worlds and converting them into planets usable for the Empire does make me happy. Oh no, we've exhausted all of our options.
And eventually regular Lapis just intimidates them into submission.
Which, yeah, that's... And even then they consider that not a victory because, well, they're basically bullying the other Lapises into not being villains. And that's not really a good way to do that.
Yeah.
But one of them does join Little Homeschool after that, so it's sort of a victory. And is interested in learning to dance. Little graduation, and this is the episode where I think the Crystal Gems and their allies really started dropping the ball.
Yeah.
Well, basically, we see the off-colors and Lars again. A.K.A. the guys I said were rife for their own spin-off show, where they explore the cosmos and have interesting and cool adventures.
Yes.
Well, they are, but guess what? We're not going to see it.
No, I mean, I get it, though.
Yeah, I know.
Lars likes baking, and this is the first time that I can think of anyway, in which a will they or won't they went on forever and then landed on a solid they won't, and not because there was a love triangle the whole time. Like, a new person you've never met shows up, and it's Sadie and Shep, and they're together, and Lars is not there, and just... You know what? We're all going to deal with it.
And Shep is a non-binary individual. I figured I have to mention that because...
Yeah, representation. The show's always been good about that.
Yeah. I mean, granted, I prefer, Shepard to be either male or female because they are Commander Shepard and this is their favorite store on the Citadel.
Yes.
Also, my usual hang-up about, dude, why are you calling an individual they? But that's just because not because
I know that's a grammar rule we all learned growing up, and now we're just unlearning it.
Yeah, dude, we have rules.
As a fellow person who, as a fellow writer, when the they pronouns thing started happening, I had to retrain my brain. But it's what we do. It's what you do for the name of tolerance.
Look,
it makes sense.
I don't have a problem with transgender or non-binary people. It's just the grammar annoys me.
This is the best solution anyone's able to come up with.
Okay, but the reason why I say this is where the Crystal Gems and their allies really started dropping the ball. Okay, before Steven had some problems. He would glow pink and do some weird stuff. And this one of the things he's been doing this whole season, he's been glowing pink and losing control of his powers because he's stressed out and, his powers are emotion-based. That makes sense. Here, Steven almost ruins everything, really, For starters, he tries desperately to get Sadie and Shep to break up because he thinks that Sadie and Lars should be together.
This is the dangers of shipping in real life, people.
Yeah. Basically trying to force everyone to confront Lars and Sadie and Shep's feelings around one another until Sadie has to interrupt him and say, dude, stop it. Lars and I talked. We weren't going to work. We know we weren't going to work. This was... Well, how come I didn't know about it? Because it wasn't any of your concern.
Yeah. We talked privately.
Of course, I should also mention that this is going on at around the same time that Steven has a minor freak out and has generated a pink energy bubble that is trying to crush every single person on the beach to death.
Yes. Crush them, towards each other because he wants them to talk and it goes too far, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Okay, here's the thing. There is a group on YouTube called The Round Table.
Okay.
I don't know if you've heard of them or not, but they've done, Steven Universe recaps and, analyzing them for their emotional meanings. And they show, clips from the episode and saying, oh, look, everyone's smiling and everyone's happy and is supportive of Steven. That means that they're appreciative of... They understand that this problem was really Steven's the whole time. It wasn't any of their problem. To which I would like to say, oh, well, that is a very emotionally mature thing. And I guess that is, true to what the emotions are trying to convey. There's just a small little problem of Steven is actively crushing people to death with a doomsday shield on accident!
Yes.
To which the appropriate response is not, oh, I understand, Steven, this is just you going through some things. It's, oh God, I'm going to die! I'm going to die squished against a centipede made of 6 different gems! I'm going to die! That is the appropriate reaction for that situation, not, oh, that's so sweet. It's kind of the problem, what I was saying earlier, that the need to deliver the emotional message sometimes outweighs what is actually happening and what should be happening according to actual human reactions and logic.
Yeah, well, thing is, if we went with actual human reactions and logic, we wouldn't have been able to get most of the story.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, because the thing with fiction in general, right? Fiction in general always has some absurdity to it. Because if it were truly accurate, it wouldn't be fiction. You could have, by analogy, Harry Potter without magic. And Harry is just a kid who goes to a boarding school and meets new friends there. And there are books like that in the world. But you wouldn't have the same sense of discovery, inhabiting the 11-year-old's perspective of wow, everything's new because I haven't seen it before, right?
That is
so
fair.
Part of the reason anyway, they introduce magic is so you can better adopt an 11-year-old's perspective going off to boarding school for the first time. The reason for, in this case, why Steven has a doomsday shield is to make visual an impulse that a realistic person might have to try and pull people together, not physically, when they shouldn't be pulled together. And oh, you should talk to them, and you should be together, and I'm upset. You should let go, Steven. It's okay. And when realistically, yes, he should just talk, and they should just talk, and then no one would freak out, and no one would be in danger of being dead. And then it wouldn't be half as visual and fiction.
Okay, and I get that Steven should talk about his problems. My concern is about how everyone else is so nonchalant about their imminent deaths.
Yeah.
To the fact that they're smiling at Steven, even though he's the one accidentally killing them.
Yeah. No, the people have been nonchalant this whole thing, not just towards Steven. They're nonchalant about the existence of corrupted gems smashing shit up. They're like, oh yeah, that's a thing. I guess what's his name, the conspiracy theorist, is all gonna rant about it, and the rest of us are gonna go about our lives like we don't have that problem.
Yeah, that's always been a little weird. That like Ronaldo was like an asshole, but at the same time, he was kind of right about a bunch of stuff, and
that's why I've kind of brought up that townie versus space thing as the first tension of the show. A lot of things are kind of related to that, and either you deal with it to some extent, and then maybe to some extent they take it too far.
Okay, but after that, this was a graduation of little homeschool. People would have heard about this sort of thing. Oh, by the way, Steven tried to kill us all on accident, and the Crystal Gems should have stepped in and said, Steven, what the actual fuck?
Yes, they
What is going on? And the rest of the story relies on the Crystal Gems not noticing that Steven had a freak out with his powers so bad that it nearly killed multiple people, and just accepting his word that he's fine. Look, and they're going the whole acceptance route. Steven, if this is how you want to be, that's fine. To which I would like to point out my own personal philosophy on that particular nugget of wisdom. I'm okay with people learning and doing what they want, so long as it doesn't hurt other people or themselves. Because the instant you start doing that, you're not just affecting yourself, you're affecting other people. If you can find your own path in life, that's great. But if you start hurting other people, you're affecting their paths in lives. Lives. So, yeah, this episode is kind of a... It kind of breaks my suspension of disbelief that, the Crystal Gems, who are basically Steven's mother figures, would have not heard of this event, and then...
I'll grant you it doesn't make sense. To throw in a couple bits of nuance, the line you're quoting later is one line from Greg, who in the same conversation says he's worried about all this stuff going on, and also everyone else in the room is going, no, seriously, Steven, this is a problem. We got to do something about it. Which they've been saying that for like 2 episodes at that point.
Yeah.
So they don't completely skip out on the whole confront your loved one who's going through a crisis and threatening the people around him idea.
Well, it's not confronting, it's actively stopping them.
Eventually, they wrestle in Godzilla style. So
well, you should probably... when he turns into a Godzilla, that's not the first time you should be wrestling him. The first time you should be wrestling him is after he... Steven, what's going on? You nearly killed some people. It's absolutely nothing. Oh, no. This is not nothing. You had a freak out and nearly killed multiple people. We are past the point of saying you can handle this on your own. Because you had a freak out, which, I'd like to remind you, nearly killed multiple people. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's just a breaking point for me. And I get what they're trying to go for. But it's either that the Crystal Gems are callous towards this, which isn't in their character.
No, not in their character at all.
They don't know about it, in which case...
Information flows very poorly in Beach City.
Yeah. Or why you heard about this and thought Steven could handle it on his own, which... Considering how badly you guys freaked out when Steven was stuck in the air... that's not really in character for you guys to just let Steven handle his powers on his own when it's causing him issues. So it feels... The reason why I'm upset about this is it feels really out of character, and it feels like they're doing this because the plot says so. Yeah. They have to do this so Steven can build up to his big breakdown at the end of the season.
You're right. It would have been nice if we could have had a better narrative excuse for them not to know about the extent of his issues. I'm not sure what that would be off the top of my head. Maybe things happening outside of Beach City instead of in it, or maybe some of it is more like happening in Steven's nightmares and not in reality. Because nightmares is an easy way for him not to threaten people, and also for other people not to know about it.
Right. I mean, yeah. I guess the real reason I'm upset about this is not because of the way that the people involved act. It's because of the way the Crystal Gems acted. And that's basically it. Let's move on to the next episode.
Sure.
Prickly Pear, where Steven resigns from Little Homeschool because he can't really deal with the fact that ultimately a teaching job will mean that everyone leaves him in the end. Understandable. Then he brings a cactus to life, and it turns into a monster because he feeds it all of his hatred, rage, and aggression. Yeah. As one does.
As one does.
Also, what happened to the cactus? It left, and then we never saw it again.
Maybe it's hanging out on Watermelon Island and calmed down at some point.
Huh.
Make a fanfic.
Anyways, yeah, so this is where the gems first start asking, Steven, are you okay? After he, brought to life a monster.
It's a bad sign.
Yeah. Although, I do love one scene where Steven tries to say, oh, okay, everything's okay, nothing to worry about, everything's fine, closes the door, and then the rest of the wall is made of screens and stuff so they can clearly see him fighting the monster. I guess that's also like an emotional thing, they're trying to get through that. Other people can see when you're going through this stuff.
Yeah, it's a nice little metaphor.
Then there's In Dreams, which I just saw today, where Steven and Peridot are watching a reboot of Camp Pining Hearts, where, in contrast to the first series, Klingons are now the allies of the Federation, and there's now a balding Frenchman played by an Englishman in charge of the Enterprise.
Yeah, that's totally happened in Camp Pining Hearts.
No, not really. Essentially, they didn't like the show, so they started writing fan fictions about it. Except they started using Steven's powers to make the show
visually appear on a TV set.
Yeah, with his dreams. I mean, but honestly, people insulting like a TV show and then trying to come up with ways for it to be better, what kind of losers do that? Right, I'm going to move on swiftly to the next topic before I... Flash bomb! Yeah, basically it shows that Steven's having messed up dreams, and he starts to realize that his only really way of interacting with people is to help fix them.
Or fix problems with them. And there's no big problem going on, so he ends up having his tearful talk with Peridot, who she assures him that she's going to be his friend anyway.
Which, I mean, this is a good message and a good thing for Steven to realize. But then given what we see later, it's kind of confusing, and I'll get to that when we get to it, assuming I remember. Bismuth Casual, which is Steven, Connie, Pearl, and Bismuth go to a roller rink. And Steven reveals that he's afraid that Connie will leave him. Also, Bismuth apparently has a crush on Pearl.
Yeah, but hey, it's been 2 years, so you never know how things change.
Yep. By the way, this is Connie's first appearance in the new series. So, yeah. Then there's Together Forever, which...
Steven decides to...
Emotional cringe is very much an application here. If you get uncomfortable watching other people be emotionally uncomfortable, you might want to skip this one.
Even though it is important for the plot.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm not...
Yeah.
But, let's see. Steven realizes, wait, Connie might leave me. But I have an idea. If I get married to Connie, then we'll be together. And it will work perfectly. After all, my mom and dad were not married and that...
They had a very loving relationship. Who cares if it was legally a thing?
Well, not even legally. It's just... I don't know. Their relationship is kind of weird. I mean, not even like in
Was it? I mean, honestly, when did they cast shade on that relationship?
Oh, they're not. I am.
Oh, well, why? I mean, what? What happened that went wrong? Aside from the fact that she sort of mysteriously died, mysteriousness.
Okay, let's see. She left a lot of problems for her future son to clean up.
I'm talking about her and Greg. You know what I was talking about.
Well, her and Greg is actually kind of the problem because I don't really remember much about her and Greg as a couple.
Yeah, because it's not their story. It's Steven's story. So.
Yeah, both of them have some pretty severe problems, which we're going to cover soon. Actually, we've already covered Pink Diamond, so we're just going to cover Greg's problems soon. Anyways, on the advice of, Ruby,
Ruby and
Sapphire, Steven decides he's going to propose to Connie.
Which he does.
Very
lovely method of proposal, too.
And she turns him down, saying, dude, we're 16. It's not the right time.
Yeah.
I mean, it's understandable, but it's still heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's Growing Pains, where Steven, here's one of this two-part episode. Well, not two-part episode. This episode and the next one kind of highlight the problems with Greg. I mean...
So, yeah, we're going to have an interesting discussion about this, I think.
Yeah, so first is growing pains, where, because of his stress, his pinkness is acting up, and Steven starts mutating, growing, bulging, and stuff. And so he goes to see the doctor, and he reveals that he's never had a general practitioner before, or a doctor of any kind. Moving along.
Yeah, I mean, that's absurd. You think he could at least get his vaccinations and all that. But...
Yeah, dude. Let's see. Then, after that, Mama Maheshwaran decides, yeah, I did an x-ray. You've got a ton of broken bones in the past. Oh, by the way, you also have PTSD.
Yeah, they saw that in the x-ray. No, but she talks about his emotional past, and he starts talking about, oh, yeah, like, I'm glad they referenced the point where he turned into cats and nearly lost control of his body permanently. And, like, that was a pretty creepy episode. And you know what? It's having an impact now.
Yeah.
I wanted to say briefly, I like that more broadly, fiction in general is starting to address PTSD as a legit thing. Iron Man struggled with that for, like, one movie. And then, Jessica Jones in her Netflix show, like, explicitly has PTSD, which, again, she gets through, like, unreasonably easily. So it's like, okay, writers, come on, step up your game. This is the best portrayal I've yet seen. And granted, there's a lot I haven't seen. Apparently, the first Rambo movie was all about PTSD, but I haven't seen it. So
I find it amusing that the example you said is, this is the best example of PTSD I've ever seen. It involved a scene where a guy mutated into a pile of cats.
Well, the scene where he's talking about his pain.
I know.
Later.
I'm just pointing out the juxtaposition.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it turns out that Steven's kind of messed up from all of the near-death things that he's been through. And Greg eventually cuts his tour short and goes, Dude, I'm here for you. I am absolutely here for you. If you need to talk, I'll be here. And Steven has a good one. How do I live if I feel like I'm always going to die? Yeah. And that's a pretty good line.
Yeah. You could think of it as a summary of PTSD, at least for some people.
Yep. Then it goes on to Mr. Universe, where Steven and Greg go on a road trip to, Greg's old stomping grounds, so that Steven can help Greg Greg can help Steven find himself. This goes badly.
So Greg shows him the CD with the original song, Mr. Universe, which inspired him to name himself Mr. Universe. I think it's a great song. I'd like to hear the rest of it.
Yeah.
And Steven starts freaking out because he realized, like, hey, because of you, Dad, I never met my grandparents, and I didn't have a normal childhood. I didn't, like, go to school. I never saw a doctor. You know, what the heck? And eventually crashes the van, but everyone's okay.
Greg tells stories about his grandparents, and how do I best put this? He tells stories about his grandparents about how it was absolutely awful. They had meatloaf like every Thursday for years, and he never had a taco. And he was in wrestling, and he did mathletes, and...
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I get that different people have different definitions of what is terrible and horrible. At the same time, I wasn't there. I don't know how the grandparents were...
Because they could easily be very cold.
And abusive.
Yeah, just emotional neglect can do just as much damage as physically hitting someone. They really can.
Well, I think it depends on how hard you hit, though.
I'm just telling you.
I've never had someone tell me you suck that was so hard it broke my arm. Though that would be kind of a cool superpower.
No, but
fuck you!
The experience of, say, falling off a bicycle or something and then you break your arm, painful though it is... Maybe you can get over it a few weeks later in a way that someone really digging into you can leave us emotional scar.
No, I understand that. I was just making fun of the fact that, physical trauma is often much swifter and easier to achieve.
Yes.
In terms of emotional violence is sometimes worse than physical violence. Really? Because I just hit a guy with a car and he wasn't moving, so... I don't think I've ever insulted someone that bad.
Well,
I get it. I'm just making fun of the concept. But anyways, so we don't really know, but at the same time, it's hard to really tell in these cases. But Greg seems to view this, like, really badly.
Yeah, I'm inclined to
to a degree, I kind of think that Greg screwed up. Okay, to a large degree, Greg definitely screwed up when raising Steven. In that I'm not exactly sure how much he actually raised Steven. Steven, in an earlier episode, said that he doesn't attend school. And not just in the, he takes homeschool kind of a way. He's never been never had a public education. Which is a big problem for Steven when he's trying to figure out who he's supposed to be, when he doesn't even have the tools necessary to identify. Like, if he wants to get a job as something... If he wants to get, like, an office job, or... Most jobs require you to have at least a GED or some form of college admittance. And that's going to be hard when he doesn't even have a medical, like, record.
It's not hard to get yourself a medical record now. They're not going to say, hey, wait, show me your vaccinations from when you were 2. They're like, did you get vaccinated ever? Yes, last week. Okay, great.
Okay, but still, you get what I'm trying to say
Yeah,
here.
well, I mean, we're going to have to unpack this bit by bit. So, first off, if apparently Greg, like, never told him about his grandparents at all, or, like, where they live, or give him the option, would you like to speak with them sometime, like even at the age of 16? That's an option Steven deserves to have, and Greg has every right to persuade him and be like, no, these are terrible people, let me tell you why. But Steven should, like, you know, be allowed to have their phone number if he wants to explore that side of the family. So I'll count that against Greg. A mistake you made there, definitely. Not getting him a basic medical checkup is absurd. Of course, you get checked up, especially at the very young ages, when they want to make sure you're growing, you know.
Okay, and speaking as a sci-fi fan here, it's absurd that he never got even the most basic of medical checkups on the basis that he's a half-human hybrid.
Right.
There could be all sorts of diseases and infections from Earth that could hit him harder because he's part gem. And not to mention, you know, various health issues, like, say, what happens when he gets stressed.
Yeah.
Without a baseline, it's much more difficult for doctors to understand what's going wrong.
Yeah. So that part's absurd. Like, how the hell did you not get around to that? It's silly. As to him not attending school, we're going to get into my thoughts about school. Anyone who likes school should absolutely be allowed to go there. Steven should have the option to go there. It was never made clear that, like, that's something that Steven had asked for and been denied. And in general, and I'll be speaking really just more to my own experience than necessarily to the intended plot structure here, but I suffered a lot in school. And I'm very passionate about giving kids different options, different sorts of schools where they can be more free-spirited, indulge more of their creative pursuits, and not go through an insane level of stress like I did that totally gave me a nervous breakdown. So I look at Steven's running around free, and my instant pattern matching is, oh, isn't that great? The kid has freedom. Now, yes, you want to talk about, well, if you look at it from a different angle, and Steven's upset he never went to school, he doesn't have the same feelings you have about it, okay, granted. But there's my piece to it, is the school question.
And my piece to that is, okay, we have very different... On some topics, you know, specifically raising children, he's more along the lines of, this is my flower child.
I'm very big on freedom.
His name is Daisy. And in comparison, I'm like the parents in 300 who will throw their children off of the cliff.
Don't do that, please. Bad parenting advice, folks. Don't follow 300 as a parenting guide.
Don't follow flower children advice. Look, there's probably a middle ground between us. I'm not actually saying, you know, we need that. But I was of the type of person who saw the need for structure and find that school provided me with an excellent structure to follow. And I saw other students who definitely could have used from far stricter environments. And yes, they could have been... But that's not really the point. I mean, we're not going to agree on what type of schooling is best. That's probably not going to happen. Both of us have our reasons for feeling the way we do. We're both right in our own ways. Except I'm more right and he's wrong.
Oh, really?
But my concern is that when Steven asked about it back in, like, the episode where Lapis first appeared, Connie explained it to him, and he had no idea what school even was.
I'll grant you that is absurd. Of course, he should be informed what it is and be allowed to visit and see what he thinks about it. Like,
yes,
the same way you're aware of anything else in the world. This is a post office. This is a whatever,
Which,
be aware at least, and then interact if you want to.
Be aware, Okay, let's leave aside the fact that truancy laws are clearly not a thing.
Yeah.
If Stephen was running around Beach City for years without anyone saying, "Hey, shouldn't you be in school?" Mm-hmm. But the fact that Stephen didn't know these things, which are fairly important and basic, doesn't paint a great picture about Stephen's upbringing. I mean, don't get me wrong. Okay, I will grant you, he was never at a lack of love.
Yeah, thankfully,
everyone who cared for him loved him absolutely.
Yeah.
But just because you love someone, that doesn't always mean it's enough.
I believe Alice Miller wrote, "It is possible to love a child passionately, but not in the way he needs to be loved."
Okay. I wasn't even talking about that sort of love. I just meant that Greg spent most of his time working at the car wash, and Stephen's primary caretakers didn't know anything about the human race.
Yes, that is a pretty odd situation.
Like, okay, Garnet was the most responsible, and yeah, Garnet has her own issues. Look, it's not great when the one that's the leader, that's probably the best suited to taking care of another human, has 3 eyes.
Yeah, I'm not going to object to the number of eyes she has, but lack of experience in human affairs.
Okay, that was what I was trying to get at. I couldn't put it into words, but
well, yeah, because obviously Stephen would like to navigate this planet called Earth. It would be nice to have someone who knows the landmarks, as it were, the cultural landmarks.
Yeah, I mean, does Stephen even know has he ever received the talk?
We have to assume that happened at some point off screen. As progressive as this show is, did you want an episode where he gets the talk?
No, I'm not asking because I want to see Stephen get the talk.
You're just asking more generally. Was he properly raised? Yeah.
Which I don't know if he actually was. Does he know how to do basic algebra? Does he does he know about human history? Does he know about any one of a number of topics that a basic education, even a homeschool education, would grant him?
You remember when they went to the library for the first time, and Connie's like, "I can't believe this is your first time in a library." That's flipping absurd. Even from my dissing on school perspective, love libraries.
Oh, yeah.
Walk in there and read whatever book you like. There's no stress about it. So why would a kid who loves books not have been introduced to a library? That's just silly.
Yeah, it doesn't... Look, I get... Greg is trying to espouse a more free-spirited lifestyle, but in doing so, either he deliberately or accidentally neglected Stephen. If it was deliberate, it was as an overcorrection to what the crimes he perceived his parents putting him through, whether they were actual or imagined. And if it was accidental, then that still doesn't reflect well on Greg.
Yeah, and to be fair, even Greg, having been yelled at, says to Stephen, "Hey, you know what? Kudos to you for calling me out." Like, it's clear he doesn't still 100% understand, but he doesn't get defensive about it and say, "Well, I'm right, you're wrong." He goes, "You know what? Maybe you have a point." So they make some allowance for Greg to be a little self-aware in that once Stephen points it out. And unfortunately, we don't get more time to converse about the details there.
And Stephen, after this episode, Stephen's just he's not happy with Greg. Oh, by the way, this episode does something really stupid. Greg lets Stephen take the wheel of the car of his van, to which I immediately paused and said, "Oh, good, let the, emotionally unstable teenager with, random outbursts of superpowers and who is suffering emotional breakdowns constantly have control over a motorized vehicle. This will end well." And at the end of the episode, Stephen crashes the car because he ripped out the steering column.
Yep.
Back in the next episode, we see we see a Bismuth and Greg trying to piece the van back together.
Yeah, I'm glad that little continuity now.
That's Fragments, the next episode. Which basically is the anime training episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, because Stephen is slowly losing his goddamn mind, and with it control over his powers, he does something that I'm not exactly sure was right, but I'm not exactly sure was wrong either. He goes to Jasper and asks her to train him so that he knows how to use his powers.
Yeah, there's something in there about the healthy release of anger, which then, of course, Jasper takes it way too far, and Steven, being prompted, takes it way too far.
Yeah, he actually ends up shattering Jasper, and then he drags her shards over to the house, plunges them underwater in the various essences of diamonds.
Yeah, apparently they can do that.
Yeah, and Jasper, despite being shattered, is reformed, which, I gotta say, kind of
lessens the whole idea of shattering. It's like, oh wait, now gems are functionally immortal, I guess.
Yeah, I mean...
I remember hearing that there's actually a little side video like on YouTube where the gems would come out and explain certain aspects of the Steven universe. And I remember Pearl saying rather solemnly, if a gem is shattered, they cease to exist. And it's like, never mind. And I guess the idea is, okay, 99% of the time you cease to exist. But then in Homeworld Bound, we see Yellow Diamond like casually fixing shattered mutation gems.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was kind of previously established, what with the cluster experiments, that gems could retain some life force.
Yeah, but I figured more of that, like, they couldn't go back to the way they were anyway. And now apparently you can do that, which is a lovely thing. And it feels just a little odd breaking the rules after you've established them.
It really doesn't. It really kind of makes the breaking point feel like not even a thing.
Right. We could just reform all these people afterwards.
So what was the big objection
to that? Any case, as far as the immediate narrative concerns, it does illustrate this notion of, okay, but you need to find a healthy way to deal with your feelings and not just kill people. Which is belatedly getting around to your point from the bubble. And the Sadie Lars bubble.
Yeah,
thing.
but at that point, at this point, the Crystal Gems officially stop, taking his word for it and start trying to force him into a confrontation. But by this point, Steven's so far gone that he's just freaking out and using time-slowing abilities and going super speed, and he visits Homeworld. Okay, and since this is Homeworld bound, you can assume naturally that it is a direct adaptation of Harry Turtledove's novel Homeworld Bound, about the end of the World War series, where humans make their first trip to the star system of Home to negotiate a peace treaty with the Emperor of the race, as well as he also rules over the Hallis and the Rabotev. It eventually ends with, and I'm not even going to try to finish it.
I couldn't throw in any references. I haven't read the book.
Okay, real quick. World War is a series about what would happen if aliens with 1985 level technology invaded in the middle of World War II. And it splits off a whole alternate history from there. There's 3 series. The first is World War, which is 4 books long, and involves Nazis as sort of good guys.
Oh, jeez, that's a weird swing.
Well, and the Jews are kind of demonized by everyone.
Okay.
Stop. But there's a reason for it. It's because the Jews were being persecuted by the Nazis and so asked the race for help, and so they're brought under the race's protection.
And when you say the race, you mean the alien race?
Yeah, the alien race is known as the race.
Okay, because you've got to be confused because the other people call themselves the Aryan race, and now this is the alien race versus the Aryan race versus the... Okay. It's all confusing.
Look, the aliens are not creative. They call their species the race, and their planet is called Home.
Got it.
Yeah, so Jews are not liked. Nazis are temporarily the good guys. However, at the end, they realize, oh, wait, they're Nazis. And, things go downhill for everyone from there.
I hope everyone's nice to Jews and doesn't adopt any Nazi ideology.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Then the second one is about the colonization fleet arriving on Earth, because the first wave was just, the aliens intended to come to Earth to take over the sword-swinging barbarians they expected to find.
Oh, I see.
Only to find the greatest mechanized war in human history occurring. So when the colonists arrive, they're like, hey, what's going on? Why are there thousands of these humans running around? And last book is Homeworld Bound, and that's a separate series entirely about humans going to home and proving, we're actually kind of your equals at this point, so stop trying to invade us.
Which is not what happens in this episode.
Which, I know. But I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah.
Is it so much to ask that I get, one version of something that shows me what a Hallis and a Rabotev look like Is it too much to ask? Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about.
No.
Anyways, in reality, Steven flees to the homeworld to ask the Diamonds for advice about, well, how do you control it when you go insane and start using your powers randomly? Which the Diamonds show, oh, we're good guys now. We use our powers only to help people.
Good for you. What an amazing turnaround.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Also,
not particularly able to help Steven, as it turns out.
Yep. Let's see. Steven nearly shatters White Diamond when White Diamond allows Steven to take over her mind, and that causes...
he nearly shatters his own skull, if you noticed. Like, it was actually... He only hurt himself, but yes, he was having a fantasy of hurting her.
Yeah, it's weird. Also, Spinel comes back.
Remember that time I tried to kill you? Anyway, everything's been great since then.
Yeah, I really wish that wasn't their attitude towards the Diamonds, too. Yeah. Anyway, then we go to Everything's Fine, which you can tell by the title means that everything is about to hit the fan.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically Steven comes back from Homeworld, and he starts lying to himself about how awesome he is and how, everything's totally under control while causing everything to spiral out of control and into flames. No, literally, at one point there is a mile-high column of smoke over Little Homeworld.
Well, kinda. He doesn't light it on fire, he just shatters it with his, "Yes, I didn't break anything," remark, which is apparently generates shockwaves all on its own.
Yeah, so eventually he comes home and everyone finally confronts him and says, "Dude, what the hell? You are absolutely not fine and we are not letting you leave until we talk about this." At which point he starts going, "I'm a fraud and I'm a monster." Okay, hang on a sec. Like, he admits that he doesn't feel like he's the person that everyone says he is.
Yeah.
That he's a fraud. He feels like a fraud. That he feels like a monster, which feels like that's a logical leap that I can't really follow. And yes, I get that he's having an emotional breakdown.
This is so many PTSD sufferers go through something like that. Believe me, I've been there.
I'm not telling the truth. I'm a monster!
Dude, yeah. I used to freaking... One time I got, like, a haircut and then freaked out afterwards alone in the car. And, like, I don't even care that much about hair. But I was like, oh no, what if it was too short or something? And, like, I just didn't, turn into Godzilla, but I was freaking out at myself. Like, people have been through stuff like that. It's rough.
Yeah, no, and I understand that. It's just... disproportionate retribution, the emotional level.
Another way to summarize PTSD. Well, disproportionate in some ways. You are very much understandable why he's stressed out considering his experiences.
Right, and I get why he has PTSD. It's just the level of the freak out is... I guess it's partially to do with him being, magic and shit, but...
Most people cannot physically turn into Godzilla. This is true.
Most people? What are you...
About one-third of people.
Is there Harry Johnson down the street who's just like, oh, hi, I'm feeling stressed today.
Godzilla.
Oh, summon the JSDF.
Oh, jeez. JSDF is therapists. That'd be a strange combination.
Yeah, no, please, no. No. Anyways, I Am My Monster, second to last episode, where... Steven turns into a giant monster and stands around roaring angrily for most of it.
He just, like, smashes random stuff in his vicinity.
Yeah, it doesn't even, like, wreck one block of the city. He doesn't even break the lighthouse on top of the hill. Come on, man. I'm not asking for you...
You just told him, like, disproportionate retribution. But if you're going to go that far, go further.
Well, yeah. I mean, you're going to show me a giant monster. At least show me him, wrecking a skyscraper. This is at least a basic, trope of the genre.
I know. They're breaking some tropes here.
God damn it, man. There is a perfectly serviceable city right next to you, and yet you choose to not attack it. Are you really 150 feet tall or something, or are you just, a weenie?
Oh, jeez. Okay. Anyway, it is a very emotional episode, actually, as they realize that he has to be saved from this soon, or he'll be named a monster forever. And people start crying about how they've contributed to Steven's pain, which is nice to see the Diamonds acknowledging that a little more explicitly.
Also the Gems, after what I said.
Mostly the Diamonds, though. They're the Nazis here. Come on.
Well, yeah, but, maybe...
maybe a scale of 1 to 10. The Nazis are over here.
Yeah, I know. Maybe you shouldn't have ignored the time he nearly murdered people on the beach, is what I'm saying for the Gems.
All right. So then Connie gives them all a speech about how they need to, be there for Steven, because Steven was always there for them, and The only person who hasn't had a Steven is Steven. I like that insight. Because there's sometimes the pattern, too. Sometimes a person gets way into only helping others, partly to distract themselves from their own pain. So Steven's totally in that type. So they give him a Godzilla-style hug, which is just lovely. And Connie, kisses him at, the space between his eyes there, bouncing on his giant nose.
And then Chancellor Palpatine and the clones fly the Malastarian gas up to his mouth and poison him.
Oh,
no, wait, that's the Zillo Beast.
That's the Zillo Beast. I kind of thought Connie should say, just before she kisses him, I love you, Steven Universe. That would be the time she says it. And maybe they decided, no, that phrase should be saved for a different occasion. I don't know. But the emotion comes across regardless.
Yeah.
Kisses him, he transforms back to normal. Lion licks him, and
then he starts crying.
He starts crying, which is a very important part of recovery for a lot of people, let me tell you.
Yeah, although I do have to wonder why crying earlier when he was, freaking out all those other times and crying wasn't the same.
Well,
look, when I'm in my freak out mode, I'm in a different mindset. I can't easily access that mindset when I'm in my normal mode, so I have a hard time understanding how freak out people act when I'm not freaking out myself.
Yeah, I think for him a lot of it had to do with the fear that all his loved ones would reject him if they saw him as less than perfect. That's what his monologue was about just before he transformed.
Yeah.
And now they've seen him at his worst and assured him that they're still here for him, and that's the primary ingredient he needs.
Why he's afraid of that in front of the crystal gems, I don't know, because... didn't Steven unleash a world, an ocean-stealing gem?
Accidentally. That's totally different.
Didn't they change his diapers?
That's extremely different from turning into Godzilla. Come on!
Well, I mean, you can't really be I can't let you see the darker side of me. Bitch, I changed your diapers!
Yeah, even so. Different concept.
I know.
Alright, so the next episode, we cut to several months in the future. It's actually called The Future. I'm glad they referenced that several months have gone by. It wasn't like yesterday. These things take time. I'm glad he references that he has a therapist.
Which, yeah.
That's important. You can find a good therapist who understands your issues. And now we're coming to the end here. You know, the writers, were like, all right, the way this ends is he leaves. And I loved, jumping ahead just a little bit, the end of every episode has been a random car going down a road with the temple in the background. And you had no idea what that was about. And then it ends up being the final shot. And I was like, I should have seen it coming. Okay, so he's saying goodbye to people. He says goodbye to Bismuth, Lapis, and Peridot, all of whom have tried to kill him in the past. But it's okay. To varying degrees, at least. They cry, and then the other gems are weirdly flat and just calm about it until he's driving away, and then he hits the brakes and backs the frick up and goes, no, seriously, and then they actually have their tearful goodbye. I'm like, oh, that's nice. And he moves on, and we don't know what's next for him, where he'll settle down. You might come back to Beach City, honestly, but, the point is they're facing the possibility that he'll move away more permanently. If they live in a world with teleporters, I think they'll be in touch. That too earlier, and he's like, oh man, Connie's college is, real far away. Oh wait, we have teleporter technology. Never mind, she's right next door. But whatever. It's a very moving show overall for all the flaws that we've picked apart and that I personally picked apart. This showed a lot to say. You might
have always said it the best way, but it had a lot to say.
It had a lot to say. It had a lot to say about relationships, talking about your feelings. Another part of that interview I mentioned with Rebecca Sugar, she mentioned she had been, many years before this show, she was the victim of an assault. And she thought she'd handled it okay, and then, a couple of years later, she started getting PTSD symptoms. Because she had, buried the original fear and emotions, and then they came out later on when, the situation had changed. So this is very personal for her, getting to write this epilogue, getting to do it. And they weren't sure they were going to get an epilogue, which is why there was all that uncertainty about, wait, is this the last season? Is this the finale? Is this now there's a movie? Is there more than the movie? Is there this? Is there that? And so they finally got it all the way to the end, and I'm so glad for that. I'm so glad for all the heart that this show had, all the fun. It was a beautiful show.
It was a good show. I might not always agree with Sonic Suns on a lot of things, particularly regarding emotional health, education, which direction you're supposed to put the TP on. It's supposed to be over, not under. Over, not under. What is wrong with you?
I don't even know what my opinion is on that.
See? Thus he's wrong. Anyways. But I thought it was overall a good show, and while I don't really get into as much of the emotional message, and think that the emotional message actually harms the story in some parts, I'm more focused on the story overall, and I think the story was quite good. Mind you, I do have some flaws with it, which I've expounded upon at length in previous episodes, and in this one, like people not acting, sane, or people having rather severe deficiencies that's... I don't know, whatever. I do think that the Steven-only viewpoint was something that should have been dropped a long time ago. I
would have liked at least an occasional non-Steven viewpoint episode, yeah.
I also think that the concept of Amethyst in the zoo hanging out with the Famethyst was massively wasted since, it formed such a big part of her story arc that it changed her character completely after that episode, and we didn't see a goddamn thing of it.
Yeah.
I dislike the Townie episodes, even though I understand the importance emotionally and physically of their existence. Look, it's good. It just has flaws that prevent me from saying, "Oh, it's my favorite thing ever." If there is a problem with it, it's that the emotional logic of things interferes with the rational logic of things.
Well, I wonder what shows we need to do that better. Actually, Avatar: The Last Airbender adds up better, I would say, than this one did. And that's why that's such a classic. Now, it doesn't cover all the same territory as this show. There's a lot of things this show does that show didn't, but that show had a greater coherence to it. And it was harder for us to pick things apart.
Yeah, Avatar is genuinely
a real high
one of the best animated shows.
Yeah,
it really is. It's why we were so You recall we did like 30 episodes of Korra,
taking it apart.
Yeah, do I regret some of the things I said now? Yes, I do. I regret a lot of things that I say sometimes. But honestly, part of the reason we were so upset at Korra is because Avatar: The Last Airbender had such a high watermark. Look, even TV Tropes has, someone commented on TV Tropes, this was on Discord. I was talking to someone about the show, and they said, well, Avatar doesn't really have bad episodes so much as episodes that aren't as good as the rest of them. Look, even The Divide, the episode everyone absolutely hates.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's still a good episode. I liked it. And, it was good, and it just wasn't up to the rest of the episodes, and it's why it's kind of hard to watch other cartoons, because there are some that are just so good.
Yeah. The clearer world building, too.
I
mean, Steven Universe, for all its loveliness, has, new powers coming out of nowhere to a fair extent. I mean, these with Stevens and some unclear things, did you honestly not remember you'd left Spinel on that rock for 3,000 years?
About that, or whatever, however long it was.
But I don't want to dwell too much on the negatives, because the positives are truly so good. And by the way, gotta mention, since we're reviewing the whole series, first gay marriage in cartoon history, major milestone, other things like that,
Yeah, that's pretty impressive.
It is. A huge number of female characters, right? Even if the main character is himself male, there's still a lot of female representation on this show.
Yeah,
An entire species worth.
Although, I guess that's kind of... I don't know if that's necessarily, groundbreaking, given... don't get me wrong, a lot of female characters, that's good. But you're selecting from a monogendered race of aliens.
Right, but they invented that race to be monogendered on purpose, so it'd be easier to be representation. Right. Gotta balance out so many other cartoons that came before. Though, granted, Avatar is a good balance. You have plenty of people on both sides.
Yeah, male and female.
Yeah. But that's, again, the high water mark, so...
Yeah, for the most part.
For the most part. So yeah, I want to say shout out to the folks back in 2016 who introduced me to Steven Universe. Old friends back in the day. Good times. I'm glad we were able to share this while we're still in touch.
I binged most of Steven Universe in like a couple nights, and
with me, yeah.
and then I texted him like, "Wait a second, what the fuck? Pink Diamond is rose quartz?"
Yeah. Spoilers. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So overall good, has some flaws. Not as good as Avatar: The Last Airbender,
But
but
what is?
very few things are. Yeah, that's our opinions on it.
Okay.
And anyway, I'm Sith King.
I'm Soxons.
Signing off.